Jen, it's okay if I start now. Cool. All right, guys, I think I'm going to get started. So my name is Ivana Veliskova, and I will be talking to you a little bit about my journey, how I got into tech, and how you can get a little bit more into JavaScript and get a little bit more involved with it. I have my Twitter username down there, so if you have any questions and you want to just shoot me a direct message, feel free to do that. I have my phone right here so I can answer questions as we go along. Or whatever, just stop me if you have a question, or I'm going too fast, or not fast enough, whatever. So just let me know. So we're going to go through who I am, why am I talking to you about this, how and why I got into JavaScript, why am I really qualified to tell you anything about the process of learning JavaScript, how can you get started. So this is going to be a little bit more about the journey that I took, the classes I had gone through, and what sorts of community involvement I've been in, and where do you go after the basics. So you learn basic JavaScript, you can write var x equals y and whatnot. What do you do after that? So a little bit into what I've done to dive more deeply into JavaScript, and what I'm planning on doing next, because you never stop learning and you should never stop learning. So what I'm planning on doing next, so if you're at this point, fantastic. If you're not there yet, these are kind of the steps that I'm planning on taking, so if you want to kind of follow in that sort of direction. How I go about doing anything within JavaScript, solving problems, and going through how I go about solving my problems within a JavaScript function. What sort of projects do you want to put into your portfolio? If you're looking for a job and you want to do something JavaScript focused, what sorts of projects should you be adding in there, and what should you be focusing on? And then my conclusions. So let's get started. So at one point in my life, I was a dancer. This was a lifetime ago, and I was a professional ballroom dancer and teacher, so I did nothing with coding. I could barely write a function. I had taken a few classes in college, and I learned a little bit of C, and I didn't do very well at it. So I just had nothing to do, and I didn't know anything about writing JavaScript or writing HTML or anything that I do now. Now I am a front-end developer at a company called WebLink just down the street. So I'm writing code all day long, and recently I've started doing a little bit more JavaScript heavy coding and work, so that's been a bit more of a focus lately, and I kind of set for myself a goal this year that I wanted to improve all of my JavaScript in all various forms. So learn some new libraries and learn different technologies and ways I can implement JavaScript into my everyday coding and life. So whenever I'm working with any freelance clients, anytime I'm working with any freelance clients, I want to be able to implement some fun functionality for them to kind of make it more interesting, make them like their website more. So why did I change careers? Well, coding is so much more fun than teaching ballroom dance all day long. It is significantly better because I get to sit, I get to kind of think about a problem and figure out a way to solve it. With teaching ballroom dance, I'm kind of doing the same thing every single day, day in and day out. I meet a new person who doesn't know how to dance, and I have to teach them the basics, and it kind of gets a little repetitive afterwards. It's a little bit more stable. So for the gentlemen in the room, how many of you will actually walk into a studio and say, I want to learn how to dance? Exactly. So as a female instructor, I would be working mostly with male students, and as you can see, not many men will actually just on their own go into a dance studio to want to learn how to dance. So it's a little bit more job opportunities within tech. So how did I get into learning JavaScript and learning any sort of coding and working in the tech field? So I started off, and I'm a firm believer of some sort of structured learning. Classes have been my just all-encompassing. They teach me what I need to know exactly at that moment. So meetups have been fantastic. They've been so helpful. I am a huge believer in Girl Develop It. Girl Develop It was there for me from the start of my tech journey. They taught me HTML, they taught me CSS, they taught me JavaScript, jQuery, Node.js, advanced concepts in JavaScript. It's been their classes range so much, and it's not just for women, it's also open to men. Just know that for the men, you'll be a little outnumbered, which doesn't happen very often in the tech community. So it's kind of a welcome environment. Online classes, I also took a lot of online classes throughout getting to this point. So I started off with Codecademy, which is a free service mostly, and you get a chance to work on some fun practice problems. They give you just like a random problem related to, I don't know, you're trying to buy cats, and how do you buy all these cats? Random example. So Codecademy has been fantastic. Just their community also, they have forums. If you get stuck on something and you can't get past a certain point, they have forums to help you out and figure out, do your problem solving with. People will advise you on where to go next. As I started working at WebLink, they set me up with a Code School account, which is a paid-for service, but similar to Codecademy. It gives you some structured problems, and you go through all the steps to learning a new technology. Whether it is JavaScript, they have all various levels. They have Ajax, they have several different courses on Ajax. They have several different courses on Angular and Node, and all these different libraries and things you can do with JavaScript. So that's been fantastic too. Coding boot camps. I've never done a coding boot camp personally, but I have a lot of friends who have had positive experiences, and they feel that the coding boot camps have really helped them get to where they are. So if you're not familiar with a coding boot camp, usually those are very concentrated, fast-paced classes that that's all you're focusing on is coding, and you're doing that day in, day out, very quickly doing projects constantly. Usually, from what I've heard, they're about 3 months long, and that's all you do is you code and you're done. So one of the ones in the area that I know of is NYCDA, New York Code and Design Academy, which doesn't sound like it's in the area, but it is. They have a branch here in Philadelphia. And they've done a couple of classes with Girl Develop It, and I've taken their Ruby class, and it's fantastic. The instructors are great. They're very helpful, and so that is a good way. That is another way to go in learning some more coding and being a little bit more focused on JavaScript or more of the logic-based coding. Reading is so important, constantly reading about various new technologies, anything that you can. I personally like to have a physical book with me, whether it is just at my desk and I can just reference it, or if I'm just looking to learn something new, and I can open it up and I can write notes in the margins and just write all over it, highlight words, whatever I need to do. So a physical book for me personally is awesome. So one of my favorites is JavaScript: The Good Parts. It's a short, very quick read from O'Reilly, and it just kind of highlights some good parts about JavaScript and the portions that you really need to know that you would be working with day in and day out. Joining a community. So when I was a ballroom dancer and an instructor, the biggest thing that they emphasized was that people want to be a part of a community. And as we're in tech, yeah, maybe we don't like being around people too much, which is why we like sitting at our computers all day. But we also do like this sense of community. Somewhere deep in our souls, there's a desire to be a part of a community, and a group of people who will help us. And that's how we build our knowledge in tech, is because we're able to talk to other people who maybe have a little bit more knowledge, and they'll tell us, oh, hey, this is how I would solve this problem, or hey, I have a question, can you help me solve this problem? So meetups, again, so Girl Develop It would be another one I'd mention, but Philly.js, that is a fantastic meetup to kind of communicate with other JavaScript developers, see what sort of problems they're having, and how they approach the solutions to these problems, and what sorts of new technologies they're using, and what they're learning, and attending conferences. So Liberty.js, yay! So attending various conferences does also help build community. You make new friends, you network, you learn about, you go to talks and you learn about different technologies that people are using. Barcamp is another great conference where you decide on what sorts of talks you want to present, and everyone at the conference votes on what they want to hear and listen to. So then you're not paying however $300 for going to a conference where you're going to go to maybe 2 talks. So Barcamp is fantastic if you kind of want to have a little bit more of a say in what talks you're going to hear. JSConf, that is a much bigger conference related to JavaScript, where they always have it in a beautiful, beautiful location. If you look it up on Google right now and you look up their location for 2016, it's like in some beautiful tropical area, and also it's much bigger. So there'll be a lot of people you don't know, a lot of talks that you'll probably have never heard anything about. So JSConf would be definitely another good recommendation. And if you just Google search JavaScript conferences, you'll just get this whole huge list of anything and everything that you might want to know about other various JavaScript conferences. Slack, if you are not aware of Slack is a great place to talk with other developers without even seeing their face. So in Philly, we have Philly Dev Slack, which if you Google search, you can get yourself an invite for that. And there are other various Slack teams, I'm sure, around in different communities. But Philly Dev Slack has a dedicated channel for JavaScript. And people just randomly will throw up a question like, hey, have you ever used this technology? Or hey, have you ever done whatnot with this? Or how would you solve this problem? I did it this way. What would you do? So people have been super willing, able, helpful in the Slack channels. So definitely join Slack channels. They're so much fun. Other things to look out for. So if you're looking for work as a JavaScript developer, definitely keep up to date with Technically. Technically Philly, fantastic resource for job postings in the area, for what other companies are doing, what technologies companies are using, what sorts of companies are actually even in the area, whether or not they're looking, because everyone's always looking for new talent and looking to hire someone fantastic, so definitely keep up to date with Technically Philly. On that note, Technically Philly also organizes a networking event called Network, which is also really awesome. I've been to Network twice in the last few years. The first time I went as someone looking for a job, and everybody is all the tech companies in the area are so willing to talk to you, and they'll give you the time of day, and it's fantastic. And the last time I went was with WebLink to help bring more people to the company, and that was also awesome because I get a sense of how other people are looking for work, and they're in a position that I was in at one point, and I'm really willing and able to help them, and I really want to do something that will help them move on and move forward in their career. So stay current, stay up to date with changing technology. JavaScript and the tech world is constantly changing. Things are being updated, there are new things. So I take some personal time and I will learn new technologies. So I learned regex. And that might not sound like a big deal, but it kind of is when you learn how to use it properly without like looking it up and using regex 101. When you learn how to do that, it is awesome. Regex is really cool and it actually works really well, a lot better than a lot of other ways I've tried string replacement and whatnot. Ajax. I don't like to claim that I'm an expert at Ajax because I'm not, but I learned a little bit and I feel confident enough to use it. Definitely want to get better at it, but it's something that I learned, that I took a class on with GDI, and I learned it. As part of that class, I also learned a little bit of object-oriented JavaScript. That was kind of a weird journey because it was a lot of stuff in that class that was happening, but object-oriented is kind of cool because recently I've kind of started using it a little bit more, playing around with it, and it gets very meta. Object-oriented JS gets very meta, in my opinion, because it can use functions that are within itself, and it's very weird. Array and string methods are super important to learn and to have at least a few of them in your back pocket and memorize. Fun fact, array has a reverse method that allows you to reverse an array right in place and it returns that reversed array. It's kind of cool. I didn't know that until recently and I learned that and I don't use it, but it's good to know. It's a fun fact to know at parties. I also learned Node.js. I took a class with GDI on Node.js and we did literally the basics, and from that I kind of took it and I ran with it. Node is so cool and so much fun. If you told me a year ago that I could build a Twitter robot that's going to tweet on its own and do all this fun stuff, I would have laughed in your face. And only 6 months ago, I built an actual Twitter robot that retweets, I don't know, it retweets job openings and it'll tweet back at you if you say hello to it. So it's pretty awesome. So things I want to do next as part of my JavaScript journey, that would be getting better at Ajax. I think that is a really important, sorry, lost the words. It's a really important, it's just really important to know. We're gonna go with that. It's really important to know and have that kind of, to be able to use it whenever you're doing any sort of functions. It's used often, very often. Object-oriented JavaScript. So I only dabbled in it a little bit, and I think that's, for me, that's another next step, and I think that is an important next step for people to learn and work on, because it should be used more. It should definitely be used more. I definitely want to learn a little bit of Angular. I've started reading a book on Angular, another O'Reilly book. I love O'Reilly. So Angular Up and Running, if you want to look that one up. That one's fantastic. I've been writing my notes in it and writing little highlighting and putting in the margins. So definitely Angular, and maybe get into a little bit of Backbone. Just kind of getting into dabbling in a little bit of everything and learning, seeing where I want to go with JavaScript. I think that's what's important, that you should take away, is that you set up a plan for yourself, you set up small goals, and then you accomplish those small goals, and then you decide from there where you want to branch out and where you want to get better at. So I don't know everything there is to know about JavaScript, but I want to learn more about various libraries and technologies and get better at those. My problem-solving methods. how do I actually get through a JavaScript problem? I get sent a ticket. I don't know what to do from there. So I write it all down. I keep all of these notebooks by me at all times. I have one in my purse, I have one by my bed, I have one at my desk. I live off of Moleskine notebooks because they're just amazing, and I just write in them. I write my notes, I write whatever I want to learn on there. I hear something, someone says some interesting fact to me, and I'm like, okay, I gotta write this down so I can look it up later. So notebooks are fantastic, and I write down all of how I'm going to solve a problem in there. If you look at my work notebook, it's basically me writing down, okay, so this is going to be how I start this problem, how I start this ticket, and this is what I'm gonna do next, and what needs to be done next. So first I think about what my end result is in a JavaScript function. What do I want it to look like, or what do I want to get back? If I'm writing a calculator, I know exactly what my end results are going to be. If I say 2 plus 3, I know my end result has to be 5. So I know exactly what it should end up as. So I know I can kind of work backwards from there to figure out the steps to get that end result. So from this, again, like I said, I work backwards to get my steps down to get to this end result. So let's say I'm building a tic-tac-toe game. I know exactly what my tic-tac-toe game should end up like. Someone's going to win, they're gonna have 3 in a row, and it's gonna say, okay, you're a winner, yay! So to get to this end result, if you work backwards, someone has to be clicking and setting in the pieces, an X and an O. Someone has to be, so you're switching players. You're constantly checking if someone has won already, because you don't know, maybe someone put in all of their pieces and they suddenly won. How do you tell them, how do you check that someone has won? So I go through all these steps. How do I get to this end result? And then I try to translate these steps after I've written it all down, try to translate it into code and into some sort of JavaScript function. So that part takes the longest, usually, because I'm trying to go through the pieces of everything that I need, make sure I'm accounting for every single potential case that might happen. So what if O wins? What happens? What if X wins? What if someone has diagonally? What if someone has vertically gotten their pieces all lined up in a row? So from there, you want to start putting projects into your portfolio. My personal opinion is share all of your projects. Whenever you write a piece of code, just put it into your portfolio. I think it shows, when you do that, it kind of shows the journey you've taken from learning the beginning, the basics, and how it's gotten you to what you're doing now. So it shows kind of the progress, how you've improved, how you've changed in the style that you write your code. So share all of your projects. Some things that I've worked on personally that I like to keep in my portfolio, it's a calculator. It's basically a form that takes all this data, asks you like, what kind of drink do you like, and how old are you, and how often do you drink this a day, and how old do you expect to live to? And it does math and tells you this is how many of this drink you're going to drink by that time. It's very useful, I can tell you. I use it all the time. So just very basic, not very pretty code, but it does what it needs to do. Later on, I built a quiz and answer form. This is not good to be using if it's a quiz for people in tech, because they can cheat. Obviously, not very secure. But this was actually for a friend who was teaching a class on Greek mythology, and he just needed, or Latin or something like that, and he just needed a quiz that will check later on when a student submits their answers to check if the answers were correct. And more for studying purposes. So I kind of helped him form a little JavaScript that he'll just put in his answers into some arrays and it'll check it for him and send it out to the student when they answer the questions correctly. And it was, very basic, just very simple. Throw it in there. It was just a random little quiz form. Tic-tac-toe game, I mentioned that tic-tac-toe game earlier. I actually built one. I look back on it now. I built this about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. And it is so terrible and so ugly when I look at the code because it's not good JavaScript, not good form, but it got the job done. It told the person that they won. It told them if they tied. It let you reset the whole game. So, it did very basic stuff. And I put it in there because I look back on it now and I say, okay, I didn't do a very good job with this, but I am so much better at JavaScript right now than I was back then. And this is the progress that I've made because I can build this a lot better this time around. A time to read calculator. So if you go to a lot of articles and a lot of websites that tell you, okay, this is how long it's going to take you to read this article, awesome. So I took a few hours to just be like, okay, I'm going to write this in pure JavaScript, no jQuery, no libraries, no nothing, just plain basic JavaScript. Let's figure this out. How am I going to do this? How am I going to count all the words that are in an article? How do I ignore images, and how do I ignore if there's a piece of code, a code snippet in this blog post, because I was writing this for my own personal blog. So how do I ignore all those pieces and get it to return the value of how long it's going to take to read just the words within the article? So that was another thing that I like to throw into my portfolio. Now's the fun stuff. So I took that Node class and I kind of ran with it afterwards. And so we did a random dinosaur generator in the Node class where it takes a JSON file with a whole lot of dinosaurs, it's like 500 names, and it returns a page, just a random page, whenever you refresh it, with a different name of a dinosaur. And after that, I ran with that, and I was like, hey, what if I looked up the Wikipedia API and I plugged that in there? So I played around with Wikipedia. Wikipedia API is not fun to play around with. It's not very pretty, but I somehow managed to get at least the intro paragraph and the intro section of the related dinosaur to pop up from the Wikipedia API, and I combined it all together on a page, and that's basically what I like to show and say, hey, I built this and it's really cool, and I'm really proud of myself because I taught myself how to, plug in this API that I've never used before, and it wasn't fun. And after that, I ran with that, and like I said, I built a Twitter robot, which that was super exciting for me as well. I've never worked with the Twitter API. And I looked up a few tutorials on how to do it, and they were super overwhelming, and also they were all written forever ago, and so the Twitter API has changed a bit since they were written. So I was kind of figuring things out on my own, and there's still stuff that I definitely improve with it, but it's cool. It does things. It tweets constantly every single day. It tweets maybe twice a day and is like, hey, there's a front-end developer job available. Yay! And if you tweet hello or hi or hey at it, it goes and tweets right back at you and is like, hey, you. So that's very exciting. And I think that's an important, this kind of progress that I've made from going from this basic form that takes data and just spits back stuff for you, back at you, going all the way to this Twitter bot that I built. I think that's awesome progress, and I think that's something that should be shown on a portfolio, and that shows that you're willing to grow and that you're willing to learn. So as I mentioned, I work at WebLink. We're hiring, and put a job description on the job board back there. But if you want to look up, we're looking for junior to mid-level front-end developers. So if you want to look up our posting, that's on Workable. And I'm going to leave that up for a little bit longer, but if you have any questions, feel free to tweet at me or just ask them out loud and I will happily answer them. Yes, we have a question.
So tech interviews are stressful. Do you have any advice for fairly new developers who are preparing for some of their first tech interviews on how to manage that stress and prepare effectively?
So I'd say talk to people who are also in the company, or maybe if you know someone who's interviewed at the company before, and if they know that what the process is. I've used resources such as Glassdoor to kind of look up interviews for myself. Sometimes people post their interview process on there, and it gives you a little bit of insight what to prepare for, what to expect. So that's probably one way. Another way is I try not to think about the interview too much beforehand, because that just starts to build up stress and you're like, oh no. And another thing I like to do is celebrate the small wins. So if you have an interview, after the interview that night, go out for a drink and just be like, hey, I had an interview, I got through it, yay! Just celebrate the little things, even if you don't get a call back or you don't know what the status is yet. Celebrate it because you got through it and you somehow made it through without, puking all over everyone. Yeah. Any other questions? Jen.
What's one of the most difficult concepts that you think you learned so far in JavaScript, and how did you go about dealing with it?
I think one of the most difficult concepts has been in Node realizing that it's actually asynchronous and that all the code just kind of runs at the same time. I understood what asynchronous meant when I learned it, but it just it never clicked to me when I was writing the Twitter bot especially. And then suddenly I was testing something out and it was telling me that the data I was looking for wasn't available yet, and I didn't understand why. And it turns out because everything was running asynchronously, so sometimes the code would run before the next function would try running before the last one finished, and so the data wasn't available. And so trying to figure out how to go about getting it to kind of cascade down and send the data that I needed to send to the next function was probably one of the most difficult things, because I just didn't understand how the asynchronous part worked. And it took reading a couple more tutorials on the Twitter bot to realize, oh, there is a waterfall function that I can use that'll allow me to send back data and cascade it down to the next function and make it kind of go. So I think that's one of the more difficult concepts to grasp, is when someone tells you, okay, so something is asynchronous, and then connecting it, saying okay, oh, that's why you say it's asynchronous, for me at least. Yeah. Oh, another one.
While breaking into the development industry as a front-end developer, did you experience fatigue at any point? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Definitely, yeah. So I was really lucky. I was able to stay with my sister for a good amount of time while I was looking for a job and trying to break into the tech industry. And there were a couple of points where I was coding every day, and because I wanted to improve my portfolio and make sure that I had the experience that everyone was looking for. And so there were a couple points where, because I was putting in all this time all day long, I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. What am I doing? I'm just not making any progress. And I kind of, at that point, it was just, okay, I need to take a break. I need to take a day off and not focus on this, and take a walk and spend the day outside, or just whatever, hang out with the dog and just kind of step back from it and like reevaluate what I want to do and reevaluate, make sure that I am on that right track and make sure I am doing exactly what I want to be doing. Any other questions? Yes? No? Ooh, I think I'm getting tweeted at. Checking the Twitters. Sorry. Let's see. No questions there on the Twitter. Anyone else have a question? Sorry, I like to dance and talk a little bit while I'm like coding and checking stuff. So that's another thing. When you're interviewing and you're in a tech interview and they ask you to do a code test, talk. Keep talking. Don't stop talking. It gets really awkward when you're just sitting there silently coding and they're like, okay, cool. So I'll talk about anything. I'll be like, oh, that didn't work. Oopsies. I'm going to go back and fix that. Or I'll just start singing, break out into song. That always breaks the ice.
Did you find any similarities, or did your background in ballroom dancing, do you feel that it helped you in any way while you were learning to become a developer?
That's a really good question. Similarities. I think the one thing that I definitely like to attribute to my background in dancing or my background as a ballroom instructor is that it kind of made me a little bit more outgoing than I used to be. Because every single day I'd have a new student come in or a new couple and I'd have to have all this energy and be like, hey, we're gonna learn to dance, even though you know nothing about it, but it's so exciting. And it, bringing that energy when I go to interviews and I'm talk to people, it kind of helps me open up a little bit more easily and talk a little bit more casually with an interviewer and just be like, I'm really excited about this and this is fantastic and I can show you this emotion and that I can, I'm not that scared to talk to you. So I think that's an important skill and that ballroom dancing definitely helped me out with. Yes?
On the subject of being scared, you're here speaking in front of a room full of people at a conference. Do you have any advice for people getting into the industry to present themselves to conferences and to speak publicly? I think it's a fantastic conference booster.
Yeah, so the first time I actually spoke was last year at Bar Camp, and it was as part of a panel of other women who broke out into the tech industry and kind of what our process was, what our journey was. And I think that helped me kind of break out into this whole public speaking thing and like I want to talk more about my journey and encourage other people and help them get to the point and have the same opportunities that I've had throughout the last year and a half. So I think definitely just kind of getting over that fear, that first initial fear of submitting a talk is so important. Regardless of what it is you want to talk about, someone's going to find it interesting and someone's going to want to hear about it. And so I think just understanding that even if you don't think that someone's going to find it interesting, there will be someone who actually is interested in what you have to say. And you might not be an expert on a subject, but that doesn't really matter because maybe someone else isn't as advanced as you are on that subject and they'll want to hear about it. Or maybe they are as advanced as you are and they might have come across a problem that you've solved before and you'll be able to exchange your notes on it and figure it out. So I think just getting over that first hurdle and just being like, okay, I do have something interesting to say and people do want to hear what I want to say, and that's important. Yes. Yeah. Green.
So I do have a question. When you were like learning to code and you were doing a lot of projects by yourself, how did you find the difference of like working with a team at your first job versus like working on your own projects individually?
It was definitely a lot more checking with the team. So the team, there was a lot more they'd check my code and be like, oh, you didn't do this very well, or you didn't do this the right way, or the way we'd like to do our code. And they'd give me feedback, and that would help me improve for the next time. While when I'm working on things on my own, I kind of do things my own way and the way I think they should be done. And no one's telling me, oh, that's wrong, or that you did that really badly. So no one, I don't have that kind of check that someone will look at my code and be like, hey, this is fantastic, or hey, you screwed up really bad. So I think I kind of like that portion of it where I'm working on a team, and the team, I send in my code for code review, and they're like, oh, I would do this a little bit differently, or you actually don't have to do it this way. This is perfectly okay. And just having that interaction and communication back and forth, being like, okay, well, but this is why I did it this way, and they'll tell me why they would do it another way, and we'd kind of settle on a middle ground, which helps both of us grow as developers, because we kind of figure out that neither of us are wrong, but neither of us are right either. We both kind of have we're right in our own way. Cool. Jessica, did you have a question? I saw your hand up.
I was going to ask if you had any advice for people who are maybe developing or in a position to train new people to help make that process a little easier.
So, just to make sure I understood your question, if I have any advice on people who are training other developers, how to make the process of training a little bit easier for
Make the person who's new to the culture feel comfortable with where they're at and how to help them get to where they want to go versus I guess down to the company.
That's a really good question. So personally, I think getting the person accustomed to what's normal at the company is very important. I know when I started at WebLink, it was really helpful to do like just some basic practice tickets that allowed me to work on a project, but it wasn't work that was going to go into the project later. It was just kind of like practice code and how do I do this actually. And then getting that feedback, constant feedback. I love constructive criticism. I really do. Some people will take it to heart a little too much, but constructive criticism is super helpful for anyone who's trying to develop, and you have to learn to take it in stride and take it and just grow from it. So definitely being constructive while also telling them, okay, so you didn't do this exactly the way I wanted it to be done, or the way it should be done as per our standards. Let's sit down and talk about this. I think what really helped while I was learning was when my lead would sit down with me and we would get a chance to pair program and just talk about what's happening, why something's not going right, and how to do it right. Or even with talking with other developers within the company, sitting down and just being like, I'm having this problem, let's work through it together, because I don't know what's going on, maybe you do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Back to that point of like finding the middle ground.
Right, exactly. Any other questions? Yes. Excellent. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for coming. And feel free to follow me on Twitter or tweet at me, or come talk to me and I can give you a business card if you are looking for a job. Yay!